Hello and thank you for watching the Angry Rooster Creations channel. Today we are taking a look at a fountain pen. This is the Hongdian 1861 Pro brass fountain pen. This pen is essentially a variation of the Hongdian Black Forest pen. Now, full disclosure, I do not have a Black Forest, so I can't A-B comparison these pens, but after having seen other people with Black Forest, it's essentially the same form factor, with the primary difference being the, obviously the material that the pen's made out of. I believe that the grip sections are pretty much the same shape. The bodies are pretty much the same, or the barrels, excuse me, are pretty much the same shape and form factor. There is a difference in the cap in the form of this swell here. It's a bit different. The finial end is different. You can actually see on the cap it does say Hongdian Black Forest 1861, and instead of having the sort of two cat yin and yang logo, it's got a dove on the finial. Also here on the cap you do have the words LT Hongdian, and you have 1861 Pro. The feed and nib are essentially the same as that in the Black Forest. You can unscrew this feed and nib section. I won't, because this pen is inked, and they are replaceable with feed and nib sections made for the Black Forest pen. Now, some things of note. While this is a raw brass pen, and this will patina, I'm going to tell you that the clip on this, which is a pretty nice clip, it's a sprung clip, so it's actually sprung inside the cap, if you can see that working there. This is not brass. I would assume it's probably aluminum that has been lacquered. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but in person you can definitely tell that that goldish kind of hue is a lacquered finish on that clip. So as this pen ages and patinas, the clip is unfortunately not going to patina with the rest of the pen, which is kind of sad. Now, I guess if I didn't mind disturbing the finish on my pen, I could take a file and nick this to see what kind of metal it is underneath that lacquer. I don't really want to do that, but my guess is it's probably aluminum. The pen clips. It has a push on, pull off cap that clips onto this ridge on the feed set on the end of the section. Clips into, well, you can't see down in there, but it clips into the cap liner, which is just a black plastic cap liner. There are no fasteners inside the cap liner. I would assume it's probably glued in there. I'm not sure. The way this pen appears to be assembled is I cannot get this to unthread. So if this end, which you can see a seam there, a little slight seam just right there, is either threaded into the end of the cap, or more likely, I would say that that cap end is probably press fit into the end of this cap. So as far as that goes, I do not believe that there is a way to effectively disassemble the cap. Not that you should have to do that, but you know, somebody else may try it at some point, but I'm pretty sure that that's mostly permanently affixed. Now, also in terms of the cap, when the question comes to whether or not you can post this cap, technically you can, but I want to show you something about that. So here the cap is loose up until there, and that's how much it moves when it actually posts. So you've got 3/32 of an inch of travel of engagement with that cap liner and the tail end of this pen. The problem with that is this brass cap is quite heavy, so it heavily backweights the pen. But the other thing is, because this is heavy, if you tend to wave or move or do things with the pen a lot, the weight of that pen and all that mass out here towards the end will cause this cap to shake loose. So while it does post and it will sit, it's not the most comfortable pen to write with posted, and like I say, if you move the pen around a lot, there's a good chance you will sling the cap off. So when I use this pen, I personally take the cap off, hold it in this hand, write, and then recap. Now, for reference, this pen, for me, is not too short to write with uncapped. For reference, hand size, if you measure across my hand, technically my hand width is that of a men's medium-sized glove. But the length of my fingers, if I wear a medium-sized glove, the length of the fingers is about that long. So by the length of my hand, I'm a large-sized glove, and by the width of my hand, I'm a medium-sized glove. So all things considered, I don't have large hands, but I don't have small hands either. They're medium-large. And for me, it is perfectly comfortable to write with this pen. Unposted, it is not too short. So depending on you, how large or small your hands are could depend on whether or not you could write with this unposted. But I would say probably almost everybody out there who would write with this pen can comfortably write with this pen unposted. Now, this pen does come with a converter. Now you can see this pen is inked. You probably won't really be able to see it too well. You can actually see there. There is a spring inside this converter. You can hear it. That's there to break up surface tension and cause the ink to flow down rather than sticking to the walls of the converter, which works quite well. It's pretty much, from what I've seen of other Hongdian pens, it's pretty much standard fare for Hongdian pens. It's a nice converter. It works. The pen, when I bought it, I think it kind of fluctuates. It can go up and down some, but I bought it. It was $19. And I believe that's what it's listed for right now, and that's, as the last time I looked, and that's March the 9th of 2025, and that's on Amazon. Now, the next thing will be to do a little bit of writing with it. This particular pen has an extra fine, I don't know if that's going to show you the nib. It's kind of got a little bit of a gold plating on a steel nib, as you can see, and this is a Hongdian extra fine nib. The ink that's in this is Noodler's Whaleman Sepia. It's a Goulet Pens exclusive. It's kind of a dry writing ink, kind of a long dry time. So this one might hard start because I had it uncapped a bunch. That's not necessarily indicative of this pen. It's more indicative of the ink that's in this pen. But that being said, it flows really well with this ink. And this ink is an ink that sometimes doesn't want to flow in other pens. So take that for what it's will. Now, also, I will say this. I will do a smear test, but don't use that as an indicator necessarily of the wetness of this pen, because the ink that I'm using also has a pretty long dry time. So when I smear it, it's not necessarily just indicating that, oh, there's a lot of ink on the paper, it's wet. It's probably going to smear longer because the ink does take a while to dry. So, anyways, I'm going to do a little bit of the writing test. So, DN. Well, 1861 Black Forest Pro with the extra fine nib. It's now, so you can see this is like I said, it didn't actually smear quite as much as I thought it would. This is a little bit slightly drier writing ink, so you'd probably see more of a smear with another ink that quickly. So don't take that to be, oh, it's a dry writing pen. It's this ink in particular. It's pretty well known for that issue. Now, but even so, with this being a kind of finicky ink, this pen flows it just fine. You can reverse write with this pen. get that to show. You can see the reverse write on the top and the non-reverse writing on the bottom there. And, you know, I will say this pen does have, you're not so much that you're going to get line variation. You can get a little bit of line variation by pressing on the pen. So if I just do some normal strokes there on the bottom, and then I do some sort of press strokes. This is not a flex nib pen. You shouldn't really try to flex the nib. But that being said, as you can see, there is a bit of line variation there. This Hongdian nib is a little bit springy. It's kind of got a soft springiness to it. That is quite nice. So there you have it. My cursive writing is not the best. My handwriting is not the best, so please excuse the ugliness of that. But for all in all, for what it's worth, I do like this pen. The main detractor for me is that the clip is not actually brass. I wasn't not fully aware of that before I bought it. Would that prevent me from buying the pen? No. It's just that as this brass hopefully patinas over time, as I use it, it's going to cause this to be brighter than the rest of the pen, and it will eventually, you know, it'll look a little weird, maybe. But time will have to tell on that one. But yeah, there's my this is my sort of general overview and review of the pen. As far as line weights and things, this is a Lamy Safari here that has an extra fine nib, so I think that's something that should probably be pretty common and a known quantity, so to speak, of comparison, because they are very common pens. I'm going to draw on there real quick. Now that one's inked with Doodler's Heart of Darkness ink, which is a different ink. But as you can see, the extra fine Hongdian is very similar. I don't have like a caliper or scale on this, but it's very similar in line weight to the extra fine Lamy Safari. And the Safari nibs, I don't have a fine nib here, but the fine and extra fine are like negligibly different. It's just that the extra fine tends to write a little drier, but the actual line weight between the two nibs is roughly almost the same, to the point that people question why they even have an extra fine and a fine. It just so happens that I have an extra fine. So there you go. All in all, I like this pen. I think it's a pretty good pen. I mostly got it because I had this sort of sepia-toned nautical ink, and I was like, oh man, it'd be really cool to have a brass pen for that. And at the time I got this, there was not very many brass pen options, at least not any that weren't crazy expensive. And then the one that there was the Traveler pen, and it's kind of iffy. Now they have a Hongdian M2 in brass that actually has a brass clip, and I actually have one of those on order. It hasn't got to me yet. So that's another option, and I know there's some other crazy Chinese options you can find if you search forever on AliExpress. But at the time when I was looking at easily attainable brass pens to go with that ink, this is the one I came up with, and I like it. I really like this nib. I really like the way it flows. The posting of the cap's a little but other than that, like I said, I don't really write with it posted, and I don't write with most of my pens posted, except for like some really small pens. So, all things considered, I do really like this pen. I certainly think it's worth it for the price that I paid. If you ever were to find this pen for less than 20 bucks, I think it would be a steal of a deal. I mean, it's a nice, heavy, weighty pen, except for the feed and this inserted feed section here, the converter itself, and the cap liner. The section, the barrel, the cap, it's all brass pretty much. So it's a weighty, nice pen. It's a nice and presentable looking pen. And if you were somebody who was looking at this pen, trying to decide whether or not you wanted to actually, pull the trigger and purchase this one, I hope that this video has helped you out, maybe, perhaps. But anyways, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like the video, drop a comment down there, tell me what you liked, tell me what you didn't like, give me some advice on how I could improve my videos. And if you really liked what you saw and you really want to help the channel out, you know, just consider subscribing. That would be very much appreciated. Any engagement's good engagement. So without further ado, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.